I used to work in low-income home weatherization, basically, giving free shit away, to help lower electricity and gas bills, and make the home more comfortable to people who really needed it, installing doors and insulation and so forth. One step in qualifying a home is testing combustion appliances, to make sure they're not emitting carbon monoxide into the living space, because if they are, and we seal up the house, we could kill the whole family. During a pre-inspection of a home, on the outskirts of the city, I asked to see the owner's water heater. He tells me that it's in the basement, which is fairly normal, and I tell him I have to inspect it before work can start. So, he goes into the kitchen and starts moving the refrigerator. Turns out the entry into the basement is underneath carpeting beneath the fridge. I should note that I went and did thousands of homes over the years, and had never seen such a thing. But, whatever, needs to be done regardless, and so I pull out my flashlight and shine it down the stairs, to check out the layout, but really to look for black widow spiders because fuck black widows. At this point, I notice a dead cat, mostly down to a skeleton. Not my favorite sight, but really common in crawl spaces and basements. I take a few steps down the stairs, and continue my spider check, and notice another couple of small animal skeletons. At this point I start to worry about gas, or poisons, or something equally dangerous, and start looking closer. There are animal skeletons everywhere, at least 10 on a cursory look. Some of them are so degraded I can't determine what they used to be. I also happen to notice that this guy is waiting at the entrance a little too quietly, with his hand on the door. Something clicks in my brain, and I get this immense sense of danger. I'm about 4 steps from the door being clear to close, I have no partner on the job with me, there's death all around me, and I realize just how hidden the entrance to the basement really was. I noped the fuck out, told the guy I needed extra tools and would be back, and marked the job as non-feasible for health and safety as I was driving away. I have no idea if I was actually in any danger, it could have been completely innocent, but I still remember the adrenaline rush and sense of doom, and sometimes you just don't take chances. In 2016 my boyfriend, now my husband, and I went camping in eastern Pennsylvania. The place we decided to stop for the night was primitive. Camping was free, no cell service, barely a road, etc. We did encounter 2 other people. They might not factor into what happened later at all, but they were creepy, so I'll describe them. The first was a woman, who had her truck off to the side of the road a little as we drove past. She had the hood open, and seemed to be waiting for someone to stop and offer to help. Usually my boyfriend had no problem helping someone, but he said this time something about her put him off. She didn't really seem like she needed help, and usually people who need help, look at you hopefully as you approach. She looked like she just expected we would stop. That's what my boyfriend said anyway, I hadn't really noticed anything that strange about her. The next person came when we had chosen a spot, and were setting up a fire for hot dogs. I had noticed people drive by a few times, but my boyfriend pointed out, each time was the same car, and the man in the car watched us each time he passed. My boyfriend was a little uneasy about this, but we had driven around for a while before finding a place we liked. It had been raining, and everything was muddy, and we wanted the driest side possible. He could have been doing the same thing. We briefly thought about moving, but the road was muddy too. If he wanted to find us, all he had to do was follow the tracks. There were some other tracks, but not many. He'd only have to backtrack a little to locate us again. He didn't come by another time, so we stayed, and spent the several remaining hours before dark goofing off. No one else drove by. Whether or not those 2 had anything else to do with our experience, the real fear came later. We had gone to sleep in our tent, and sometime around 3 a.m., we were awoken by this very loud noise. I can't describe it very well, or even remember exactly what it sounded like, but my boyfriend said, it reminded him of a chain gun revving up. It was also similar to how it would sound if someone recorded a shovel being dragged over gravel and played it over a loudspeaker. He jumped up and looked out the little window, but couldn't really see anything. The sound repeated itself another few times. I was too scared to speak, so my boyfriend whispered that it was probably miles off, and I should go back to sleep. I didn't question this, as I figured loud sounds could be easily heard miles off. After we left, he told me it sounded like it had actually been coming from just down the road, but he didn't want to freak me out. Looking back, I probably should have wondered why he would bother to whisper, if apparently the sound was far off. I was still terrified. Every little thing I heard outside sounded like someone was walking around the tent. We laid there for a while longer, when finally my boyfriend told me to get dressed because we were leaving. I got alarmed by this, and even more alarmed when he unwrapped the machete we had bought just for this trip from its plastic before opening the tent. We quickly packed up and loaded the car. I looked around for footprints that weren't our own, but despite the moon providing plenty of light, I couldn't really see. I did point out something my boyfriend hadn't noticed before we got into the car. There was a beer can by our dead fire that hasn't been there before. We didn't even bring beer. While we were driving away, my boyfriend explained that he was nervous someone might have been trying to lure us out, so he didn't think it was a good idea to run from the tent right away. He also half expected to find out our gas tank had been siphoned out, but that wouldn't have stopped us because we had a hybrid car. We joked that that would make a funny hybrid commercial. Number of brutal murders avoided by driving a hybrid. We only joked because we were about shitting ourselves from fear and adrenaline even then. The rest of our trip we only stayed in well-populated campsites or got a hotel. This took place in the Australian bush around 10:11 at night. I was 17, leading a staggered column of about 60 cadets to our detachment campsite. Due to light discipline rules, only myself at the very front of the group, and the other flight commander at the rear had torches on. This was so that any vehicles coming along the trail could see us, and so that most of the cadets could maintain their night vision. We were camouflaged up and thus difficult to see at night. As we walked along, I periodically looked to my sides, and kept seeing what looked like dewdrops on the ground. Almost like tiny blue gems, glinting in my torchlight either side of the road. I had to maintain my position in the formation, so I couldn't get a good look at what they were. However, after a while we stopped for a very brief break, and I took the opportunity to have a closer look. Walking over to the side of the trail, I spotted a small cluster of the diamonds and focused my head torch on them. Rather than seeing diamonds or dewdrops or anything remotely pleasant, I instead saw a group of about 5 large spiders just crouching in the leaf litter and staring at me. They looked like huntsmen's, which are about the size of an adult's hand. Sweeping my head around, I realized there were thousands of the things. All over the ground, some on the trunks of trees, and everywhere around me, glaring at the light affixed to my head. I had a very brisk walk back to the formation and attempted to play it cool while screaming in my head. Being a massive arachnophobe, I have no fucking clue how I managed to set up a tent and spend the next week in that cursed forest. My boyfriend and I were backpacking through rural Tasmania a few years ago. While on a bus, we were discussing our plans for the ensuing 2 weeks. The girl in the seat in front turns around and offers us a place to stay in her town. We declined as we were headed elsewhere first, but she gave us her mobile number and said that she and her partner would love to have us. A few days later, we decide to take them up on their offer. We call her, and she says they're happy to host us. So far so good. They meet us at the train station, and immediately something feels off. It's really difficult to explain, but it's that primal, ineffable feeling in your guts that tells you that something isn't right. We ignored our guts, and followed them. They lead us straight out of town. We ask them where we're going, and they say that they live on the outskirts. This town is creepy as fuck. It's an old mining town that has been largely abandoned, and as we walk the 15 odd minutes to their home, the houses get shittier, with boarded up windows, overgrown gardens, and no people in sight. Eventually, we reach the house at the very end of the town. It's their house. We got in. Set up in the middle of the living room is a single mattress, with a sheet hanging around it. They show us around the house, except for one door which stays closed. When I asked what was behind it, they pretended not to hear. Our room has a made bed, chest of drawers, and looks like a normal room. It seems weird that they sleep on mattresses in the living room, when they have a guest room. We go back into the living room and look around. Knives. A lot of knives. My boyfriend asks if they go hunting. No. The partner hands one of the knives to my boyfriend and asks him to open it. It's a massive fucking Bowie knife with what looks like blood staining around the edges of the blade. My boyfriend laughs awkwardly and sets it down. They have a tattoo gun, to practice. My boyfriend asks if they have any tattoos. No. There's a small axe at the door. I ask if they collect wood. No. Suddenly the guy says he wants to go to the shops. We agree quickly because we're creeped out and want to get back into the town. The four of us leave and they start walking in the opposite direction to the town. I say that the town is back the other way. The guy says this way would be more interesting because it goes up through the trees. He says that they have never been up the mountain before, but he knows the area and it would take the same amount of time. I tell my boyfriend that I'm freaking out, but he thinks it's okay. We follow them into the trees. The path goes up the mountain. We are going in the total opposite direction of the town. The girl turns around to her partner and whispers, "So where was the place again?" My boyfriend and I freeze. I say I want to take the road back to town and start walking. When the four of us arrive in the one shop in town, no one recognizes the couple. And this is a really small town. We make an excuse that we want to go look at sights and that we'll catch up with them later, and instead book a hotel room and freak out. I did some snooping on the area. Their house had an extra room, behind the mystery door, and a basement. The path that we were taking led straight out of town and up the mountain. There was no way it could loop back into town. So yeah, pretty sure we narrowly avoided being murdered. Or maybe they were just massive weirdos. To be honest, the creepiest thing was the fact that there was no drug paraphernalia at all. The state of the house and the weird behavior would have been understandable if they were intoxicated, but that wasn't the case. In southwest Georgia, in the dense hardwoods, around 8 miles out of the town of Attapulgis, I had a pretty disturbing encounter. I was around 16 years old, 5 years ago. My dad and I went hunting. We always climbed different trees, anywhere from 1 mile to 4 miles apart. We did this, so that maybe if we startled any deer, they'd wander towards the other hunter. Anyway, as I was climbing the tree with my tree lounge, I heard something below me, round 12 feet down at this point, about 30 yards out, sounded like twigs cracking. So I stop and look behind me, to see just the dense woods. Figure it's a small critter, squirrel, or some such. About half an hour later I'm settled in my tree and the sun is starting to peek through the leaves. It's no longer in the twilight of dawn, it's becoming morning. As I'm sitting in my comfy stand, I notice a palmetto bush. Normally this isn't anything odd, but the fact that I noticed it threw me off. Why did I notice it? I sat and stared and couldn't figure out what it was that caught my eye. A palmetto bush looks like the top of a palm tree that sits on the ground, and has a few sort of hairs, tails that stick up and produce some pretty tasty berries. Well, I couldn't figure it out, so I keep scanning the area. A couple hours passed, and I keep noticing this damn bush. Why? Why is it so spectacular all of a sudden? It's a bush, damn it. A normal palmetto bush. Whatever, I kept on hunting for these deer. Around 11 a.m., my pa rings me on the pager, says he wants to walk to what we called the honey hole. A good hunting location full of deer around this time. Has a little stream, plenty of cover for them, and plenty of sneaky passages for us. Okay pa, I'll meet you there. As I begin packing up, I noticed twigs snapping again. It came from the bush. So I look, and I figured out what it was that stood out so damn much. There was a man staring at me through the bush. He had a scraggly ass beard, a tan coat, and some jumper suit pants on. He had a hood up that was the color of the bush. Not only that, he had covered his face in mud. A common hunting camouflage technique. Noticing this, I grabbed my Remington 700, and pointed towards the ground near the man. Soon as I did this, he let out a terrifying cackle and darted towards the direction of a creek, about 150 yards away from my tree. I watched him through my scope. I could hear him and see him cackling the whole way. And the scariest part? He leapt across a creek that's about 9 feet wide. In a single jump. Now where he leapt it might have been only 5 or 6 feet wide, but even then, I wasn't as scared as I was disturbed. I had a rifle, a damn good one too. 6-round capacity, bolt action. I have never missed a shot on any animal with my rifle, so I felt safe and confident in my skills and equipment. But even then, it was strange as all hell. The land was a public hunting club's land, which is why I didn't shoot him. I got down and continued to the honey hole, where I told Pa about the situation. Anyhow, we kept hunting that location in the future after the incident, never saw him again. Told the club about him and nobody had heard of anything like it. But about 3 months later he was spotted by someone else who also used tree climber stands. They said they had been hunting a specific hunting site in a certain tree for a couple days at the time. One morning at dawn they climbed into the tree, and after getting settled in they saw something eye level out the corner of their eye. When they looked, it was the same description of the man I saw, but he was in an adjacent tree hanging upside down like a sloth, staring at them. Note this is about 20 feet up. When they spotted him and threatened to shoot him, he cackled and climbed down the tree very quickly, in a matter of a few seconds. He dashed off into the planted pines behind the guy, and that was the last I've heard of the weirdo. I was out on the coast in the Pacific Northwest. You drive west through the mountains, hit the coast, and Highway 101 NS has just the most gorgeous collection of habitats. You can be on sea cliffs, or near tidal pools, or in the coastal pines with ferns the size of small cars, or areas that get swallowed up by the Pacific, that have little microbiome inside the felled trees, and you can see the natural battle for high ground. Areas in which ferns and fungi are more prevalent than any animal, emerald groves dotted with little amanita mushrooms, these little rubies and gold nuggets standing out against the reddish-brown pine needles. For the most part, out here, you're safe. Being keenly aware of your surroundings should keep you from disappearing, and using a walking stick will save you a broken leg or a fall, all of which are very real dangers. There's big cats and bear and elk and moose, but so long as you're not stupid, and you stay aware, you're gonna be okay. But every now and then, a new large cat warning sign goes up, for a few weeks, a new no poaching sign appears for a while, etc. If you travel through enough of it, you'll find the meth labs and hobo huts, and those really are the most dangerous animals you're going to run into. It's early in the season, and I'm on this spit, which by December, is just nailed by waves and disappears in the storms. Part of it was engineered for this, and the main path has little hills on the left and right sides, so the whole path is effectively a massive game trail. That's always the first thing to flood. The wildlife chill at the very open-end area at the sea, and every now and again a cat will chase a deer up and make a kill, then drag it off to the sides. You'll sometimes see marks of struggle, but more often just remains off-path. The sea and I are very familiar with each other, here. But just this one night, man. It was getting dark and I'm at the open wildlife area, thinking how I gotta get back to the car. I checked my flashlights, but I had burned through them 12 to 16 hours earlier in the pre-dawn hours. I check the comforting rhythmic lights of 2 landmarks, and triangulate where I'm at and tuck that away. I put the lights away, and figure if I can't find my way back in the dark, then I don't belong out there at this hour ever again. I'm slowly walking back, keeping a steady and committed pace but not running or making myself a prey target. But something just wasn't right. I text my wife and let her know I'm okay, just a little freaked out, but I'll be back at my car when signal returns in 60 minutes. The faint glow of my cell was the last light I'd see. Something was wrong. I felt like I was being followed, but thought my nerves got the better of me. I heard some snapping twigs and rustling and all the wildlife waking up or going to sleep. All of it was normal, until it wasn't. I thought I'd heard whispers, but knew it was just the whispers of the wind over the water, and splash on the rocks, and animals going to sleep. I reached for my phone and realized I'd have no signal, and it would just give me away, so I get back to it. I get maybe 20 feet and there it is again. I didn't see any bear, or elk, or anything, and if it was a large cat I'd never hear it or see it coming. If it was a deer, it'd be stumbly bumbly loud. I hear a snap, more like a thwack. And this was no tiny twig, so whatever it wasn't small. I keep thinking, it's a person. It's a person. Someone has seen me out here and either wants my gear and cash or to kill me. I make it in the final half-mile stretch, and by now, I'm sure I would have been attacked if it was an animal. I see the faint not nature parking lot, in the scant moonlight, and could hit it with my light if it worked. I spin around thinking fuck it, I can bolt because it's definitely a person or people, and I'm better off defending myself than I am just being attacked. I break out my phone and shine it down this looming corridor of coast, the trees flanking, the path hugging, the light, and kind of holding it in. Nothing. I let out a sigh of relief. Snap. Again, but behind me now, so whatever it was made its way around me. It's close. A deer takes off in the sedge, and I hear more and more snaps and shuffling, and branches catching on jackets, and it hits me, and I put 2 and 2 together. They're trying to get me before I can get to the car. This goes through my head, and I worry it's the last thought I'll ever have. I move off the path one would anticipate and try to skirt around the whole situation, because, hey, maybe it's still just me freaking out, man. I cut through the sedge and wild berries and get some distance, and cut back through to the main trailhead parking lot. I had seen no people all morning, day, evening, which was odd because there's half a dozen cars and I would have seen one of them. I get to the car and fumble my keys and get in, fire the thing up before my ass hits the seat and rip it the fuck out of there. Behind me, in the light cast by the small restrooms and soft moonlight, are 7 or 8 males. Some are still running at the car but slowing down as I put distance between us. I saw the faint soft silvery glint of blades, in some of their hands, and one machete, and the rest had sticks or other blunt type objects. I don't know what the fuck they wanted, but they wanted it really bad. I've been hiking there for years and will not be going back. I hope you like this video. For more content please like and subscribe.